You're listening to CX Confessions, brought to you by Khoros. In each episode, we'll share the customer experience stories and insights you need, straight from the sharpest minds in CX, to better connect with your customers and create customers for life. Let's start the show.
Hello, and welcome to CX Confessions, the customer experience show. I'm Catherine Calvert, CMO for Khoros, and I'm the host of the show and joined, as always, by my fabulous co-host, Mr. Spike Jones, head of our strategic services business. How you doing, Spike?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm still here. Like I said, can't get rid of me. But it's always a pleasure.
And today is going to be a great day because we have a very fabulous guest joining us. Are you ready for a great conversation?
Yes, please. I've been looking forward to this one, so I am ready, yes.
Awesome. Well, I would love to introduce you and our audience to the fabulous Sangeeta Mudnal. She is Vice President of Customer Experience at Crown Castle. Now, if you don't know Crown Castle, that's okay, but you probably should. It is the nation's largest provider of communications infrastructure. That is serious technology. We're talking about towers, small cells, fiber networks. They bring it all together to help us literally stay connected. So Sangeeta's here to share a little bit about her journey. She joined Crown Castle from Microsoft, where she had her fingerprints all over the global adoption of Microsoft Excel and others. She's got some great stories to tell. Welcome to the show, Sangeeta.
Thank you, Catherine, for that really nice introduction. And hi, Spike. Nice to meet you. And I look forward to our conversation today as I talk about my journey from Microsoft B2C world to Crown Castle in a B2B world. But look forward to the conversation today.
We are so excited to have you here. We love to bring in a mix of senior execs from both from companies that serve B2B audiences as well as B2C audiences. And now Crown Castle is technically a B2B company. You sell to mostly government agencies, if I got that right. I'd love to get your take on what that means. Is there even a difference, B2B, B2C?
I think so. Thanks, Catherine and Spike, for having me over as one of your B2B guests. So we'll definitely talk a little bit about B2C versus B2B. But just kind of stepping back, Crown Castle is one of the largest nation's provider for communication infrastructure. So we work with our wireless providers like the AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, Dish, and all the other. We have fiber offering as well. So it's kind of, and then we work with the jurisdictions and governments and what have you to help streamline the experience for our customers.
Doesn't sound complicated at all. It sounds really easy.
Not at all. That's true. So before we talk about B2B and B2C, I would again like to start with the customer and the industry and the macro trends that we are seeing. So today, as we know, and we are living it, every day we are in the age of customers, right? We as customers can access information about products and services, pricing, revenue, reviews, what have you, anytime and anywhere. So customers are really empowered. And then when you couple that with the digital transformation that is ongoing in so many industries, those two come together and they are really remaking markets and creating risks for companies, whether it's B2C or B2B. So that's how I think about kind of the overall kind of customer customer experience phase that we are in. There's a really great saying from Blake Morgan, who is one of the CX leaders, and it goes like this: it's the buyer is having these delicious, seamless customer experiences from companies like Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, or Apple products, and then they go to make a large work purchase for their company, and they have terrible customer experiences as a B2B customers. So what's happening is many of these B2B companies are realizing that they are held to the same standards as these consumer-friendly, customer-focused companies, and they really need to start thinking about that customer experience. So that's kind of one of the things from like B2B versus B2C. So yes, there are differences, and we'll talk through some of it in our conversation today. When it comes to customer experience strategies, but what I truly believe is at the core, it's all about customer loyalty, right? And evoking that positive customer emotion. And when I talk about customer loyalty, it's about retention, it's about repeated purchases and advocacy. And as you can see, that is definitely what is very consistent when it comes to B2B and B2C. You want to retain your customers. These customers, you increase your, have to, make sure that their customer lifetime value is increased to repeated purchases, and you want them as advocates for your company. So that's kind of one of the core similarities that I've seen in that kind of overall transition. But also talking through the B2C versus B2B, one of the key differences that I've seen is when we are trying to get customer feedback via customer surveys or other tools. So when it comes to B2B, you field a survey with your customers in your community, like companies like yours support a lot of that, and get feedback, and then you close the loop with them either through the communities, other channels that you have. But when it comes to B2B, you have to really think deeply about that customer organization that you're working with, right? You have to think about the frontline employees, the mid-level management, and then the VP level and the exec level. And when you're fielding these surveys or voice of customer channels, you want to be very mindful of that, because what we have realized is there might be key decision makers in that organization hierarchy who you want to get feedback from and address any potential concerns. And then at the end of it is you really want to retain them if they're on the verge of switching providers when it comes to companies like Crown Castle and all of that. So that's one key difference that I saw apart from the similarity that we talked about.
And I think I was just going to add, Sangeeta, I think that's the heart, the way you're talking about that individual within the org is the heart of that
right.
similarity. When we first met, we talked a little bit about that, right? B2B is you're still selling to a person. There's someone in that company. It's not a company that signs the contract, right? It's probably a group of people. And so having that orientation and understanding as you describe it about what each of those different catalysts or detractors or but at their heart people care about and how you might be able to make their life easier. That's true B2B or B2C.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So, thank you for saying loyalty instead of satisfaction. That made me very happy. We were on with Don Peppers, and we were talking about the differences between those two things and how to work people up that loyalty ladder to advocacy, which is very, very important. And the other part too is old school Spike way back in the day learned that B2C is people want stuff, and B2B is people want information. How do I get better at my job? But that, it seems like, in your experience and in the experience that you've had along the way, those lines have very much blurred. And there are so many similarities now between the two, for sure. Sure, distinct differences, but distinct similarities as well. So to get a B2B company to think that way, I mean, was that difficult? What does that journey look like to get that buy-in from the folks that you work with?
I think that's a great question. I think when it's been 1 year at Crown Castle for me. So prior to that, I was in Microsoft, and here I joined Crown Castle in the midst of pandemic. So not having met any, actual teammate in person to come in and start a new function, which is the customer experience function. It's not just in Crown Castle, but many companies are just starting out this new CX function. And not only to have vision, strategy, but actual initiatives, and then kind of rally the the stakeholders, the leadership, the teammates. So definitely one of the challenging moves I made in my career.
Sure.
But it's been really great so far, right? I kind of went back to the basics. Like, okay, when you are trying to kind of roll out a CX vision, that experience that you intend to deliver, you need to have a vision around it. And when you're trying to build that vision, you typically use the framework that you leverage to build that vision. And so what I did was, typically as you do for building your vision and strategies, understand the company culture. In Crown Castle, there's the concept of B3 values, which is be an owner, and kind of have that ownership mindset. Also looking at our 3 lines of businesses. So as I mentioned to Catherine earlier, we have fiber business, we have wireless and tower business, and small cell. And then the key thing that I did was, as part of my listening tour and listening contract, met a lot of stakeholders in the company to understand what are the emerging CX themes already in the company, where the company is already doing well, and how do we take that and take it to the next level. So, for example, one of the AT&T is one of our biggest customers, and when we finished 2020, we were ranked among our first amongst all the vendors in 20 of their 24 markets, and there was a generous improvement from the previous ranking where we were 14 out of 24 markets. So a lot of these, such good CX initiatives that were already operational, I learned from them and then decide and work with the stakeholders to come to the next level and have a new vision for CX for Crown Castle. And so our vision is, Crown Castle is one of America's most trusted infrastructure platform, providing innovative connectivity solutions. And we relentlessly orchestrate customer success across all teams to provide a delightful customer experience. So I really wanted our brand to evoke customer emotions around trust and delight, and they should form the pillars of everything we do. Customer trust, as we know, is built by delivering on promises consistently, and customer delight is surprising the customer by exceeding his or her expectations. So obviously there was a lot of discussion around customer delight. Should we talk about customer value that we are providing, given that we are in a B2B world? But I, truly believed, and I talked about how customer delight can help differentiate us, our product and services from the competition. So those were some of the aspects of that journey to come up with that vision, and then into the strategy and bring along our stakeholders. So kind of really where we are now is, in addition to the CX vision that I just talked about, when we are talking about sales and profitability and company goals, one of them that we have at the company level is how ease, speed, and predictability thrill customers. So it's really great to see that journey of overall company from delighting to kind of thrilling the customers, and so just sharing some stories there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, delighting customers is something as marketers that we hear: surprise and delight, and delighting customers. And so, but you've thrown a new term in there. You're writing a big check when you talk about thrilling customers, taking them from delight to thrill. I mean, that's a tall order, my friend. What does that look like in your mind, especially when it comes to your business?
Yeah. So I think now that we talked about the vision, we want to break it down into the strategy and then really execute on projects, with keeping that mind is like, how do we thrill customers? So one of the key pillars that we are starting to look at is our customer segmentation, right? We really want to understand our customer segments and what specific needs and aspirations those customer segments have, and how do we bring our innovation to the forefront to help solve their problems and develop that customized solutions for them. So that's what we think about CX differentiation that looks like for Crown Castle. And one very quick example that I can talk about is we launched a program called WISP Go. So it's a customer-first program that was built specifically for WISP. WISP is wireless internet service providers who serve many of the rural areas in America.
WISP,
so
that's
ready
so
to
neat.
go.
Okay, WISP.
Yeah. We are ready to go with this new formal WISP program that takes a very different approach, whether it's pricing, tiered support. It's all centered around making it simple and easy. The FCC has announced like $16 billion of RDOF fund, which is the Rural Digital Funds, over the next 10 years. And so we want to partner with WISP as they navigate their toughest deployment challenges and getting them on air faster. So that's what thrilling customers is all about, right? Like, really helping with their toughest problems and getting them on air faster. And apart from just launching this program, at a personal level, I'm very excited about this program because it's really enabling and reducing that digital divide that exists in the country. So it really helps bring purpose to my job. So that was one exciting piece around WISP Go. But, answering your question, that's kind of a continued CX strategies. How do we look at segments of customers, cohorts of customers, either based on CLV, vertical industries, or their deployment patterns or solutions, and then how do we have customized solutions to offer to them? And that's an ongoing part of a strategy that we are continuing to execute on.
That the WISP story is amazing, Sangeeta, and you just mentioned that notion of the digital divide, and what does that mean to you? Because I think it's answered so beautifully in some of the ways that you talk about closing that gap. But can you remind the audience what do we mean when we talk about the digital divide?
Yeah. So I think when we look at the digital divide at the basic level, it's access to our most common resource that we talk about as internet, right? And internet and this whole technology revolution that is being delivered through the internet is very focused in certain urban areas. And not as much in terms of the internet access, whether it's upload or download within the rural areas. And during the pandemic, it became even more of a significant problem, that digital divide, because everybody was working from home or learning from home, and if you don't have that foundational connectivity, you're left behind. And so that's something that we are very passionate about at Crown Castle. We definitely had during the pandemic a lot of offers that we gave to our customers, healthcare hospitals, where we improved our bandwidth offerings to them at a very competitive pricing. So we really think about digital divide, about really helping and everyone get the same level of access when it comes to connectivity to the internet.
I mean, must be, I know you just said it inspires you and helps you give purpose, and it must be, what a great mission for the team.
Yeah.
And, we talk on this show about community and what that means for connecting your customers, connecting you to your customers, connecting your customers to each other. And I was really struck by the way Crown Castle, which has such incredibly complex technology, really talks about the offering in the value in very humanistic terms. You talk about community and keeping communities connected to what they care about most. How do you all think about that from the point of view of what you're bringing to market?
Yeah. So I think, as you just mentioned, right, it's like we work with a lot of the communities, whether it's government agencies or the districts and the jurisdictions, all the way to our big three customers and the WISP customers and fiber. So definitely a huge surface area that we cover when it comes to communities. We have obviously a dedicated government affairs team and a marketing team that has a lot of programs that work very closely and in a very targeted fashion when it comes to the newest technologies, whether it's 5G or edge computing, or all the way to the WISP, which is providing connectivity in the rural areas. So we have really great teams and strategies around that. For me, I think when I think about community, one of the examples that really stands out is when I was working in Microsoft and how we built a community around Excel. As we all know, Excel is one of the most popular Office products from Microsoft, with over 500 million users. And so, how do you create that community and connection with our Excel customers at scale? So that's one thing that we were, when I started out on the team, we were one of the first teams in Office that introduced the concept of tech community website. And we did a lot of social engagement like Reddit AMAs and bloggings and other engagements. And also what we realized is we can have a lot of marketing and like community efforts, but we wanted to make sure that we go beyond that. So we really look at, there is a really good MVP program that Microsoft has, the Microsoft Valuable Professional Program, and so we activated it even further, and then we reached out to a lot of influencers worldwide, whether it's the YouTubers or the folks who are training on Excel or blogging or have a lot of expertise in Excel that they're already sharing with their customer base today. And so we leverage them as a megaphone to build awareness of our new features and capabilities. And one of some of the exciting moments were when we had a user voice community in Excel, and we used to list out the capabilities that we want to build, what customers want us to build, and then we would actually share our roadmap with them. And then we when we build those features and capabilities and release it, that announcement would go out. And so that validation that used to come from customers, like, yay, that's awesome to see that you're actually listening to us and engaging with us and building the product based on our needs. Obviously, we would take that as one of the inputs as part of our strategies on building the features in Excel, but it was one of the key strategies that we had. So just wanted to talk about that experience on how did we do the community outreach within Excel and try to scale our engagement in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I think one of the things people often forget is whenever you create these powerful communities, you have built-in focus groups of people just clamoring to give you free feedback that you do not have to pay for. They will tell you what they want, and they're not afraid. I think that's a great thing to point out. And I would gladly join the Excel community if someone could teach me how to do a pivot table. Anyway. You hit on it a little bit before when you're talking about this digital divide, but we know, especially during the pandemic, this idea and this concept and this belief and this brand starting to embrace social good. And really, what does that mean from company to company? Because we know, especially the millennials and Gen Z, like they want to deal with companies that believe in something bigger than themselves, and they want to have this connection point. So when it comes to what you're doing and what you've seen in Crown Castle, what does that concept of social good mean to you, and how are y'all putting it out there in the world?
Yep. Yeah, I think so. We talked about what Crown Castle has done within the community since last year. Because connectivity became such a critical asset that we want to really have high reliability and availability and the right pricing and enable the healthcare companies to schools to what have you. So a lot of goodness that has been kind of spread through the various initiatives, not only this year and through the last year, but through many years of Crown Castle being that infrastructure provider. And for me, I think technology and social good are definitely an area of passion, right? When I talked about my last role at Microsoft, I was helping drive some of the responsible AI product scenarios, right? And as we all know, AI technology, a lot of this has transformed from vision to reality. It's creating tangible benefits for people and enterprises around the world. But like any great technological innovation, it poses complex and challenging questions about the future we want to see. So some of the things that we did at Microsoft is develop a toolkit for assessing and improving fairness in AI. And what does that really mean, right? Assessing and improving fairness in AI. So I give a example when I used to be at Microsoft. So at that time, Microsoft was partnering with a large financial lending institution to develop a risk scoring system for loan approvals. They trained an existing industry model using the customer's data. On conducting the audit of that system, it was discovered that while it only approved low-risk loans, all approved loans were for male borrowers only. So the training data reflected the fact that the loan officers historically had favored male borrowers. And inspecting that system allowed the team to identify and address that bias before the system was deployed. So that's kind of how I mean about the bringing technology and social good. It's really important for us to understand that and then not have the unintended consequences.
Yeah, it's like data for good, right? It's using the tools that you have. That's really interesting.
So powerful.
So there's two questions that we ask every guest. So of course we want to hear from you as well. So the first one is, what is a commonly held belief or industry practice that you passionately disagree with?
So I think it's very much kind of continued from my previous answer that I had around social good and AI. So one of the industry beliefs is that AI will be replacing jobs in the future. So we know that employees in industries ranging from healthcare to agriculture to industry sectors can all expect to see disruptions in hiring or losing their jobs due to AI. So my belief there is, yes, AI will replace certain sets of jobs, but most importantly, it will be actually empowering the existing jobs with new enabling tools and mechanisms that will help you do your job better, right? And that's kind of where I see the most potential for AI to empower your existing jobs. And then finally, AI is going to create many more new jobs. So I'm not too worried about AI replacing our jobs. That's kind of you keep hearing about that in the industry. Obviously AI can help with, creating, whenever there is streamlining workflows and processes, replacing repetitive processes or, error-free execution, and many, many more scenarios that we are aware of in terms of AI. But when it comes to, for example, customer experience, right, establishing that trust and that human-to-human connection is going to be more important than ever before, especially in a B2B world. So it's not all kind of going to be AI driven. My belief is the future is going to be a hybrid CX model, which is a combination of physical and digital and AI, and that certain element of the human intuition and connection and creativity definitely AI cannot replace, and and that's kind of what my belief
I
is.
think that's so powerful, Sangeeta. I think we've seen that fear mongering around the risks and the challenges. But to your point, I think we've also seen that it can make those, it gives you more space to have those more powerful human interactions, and even can inform those and make those real human moments smarter and better when you have better insights and better visibility into what your customers are really trying to tell you through their behavior and their engagement.
Right, yeah. And I think the key thing there is, it's not just about the AI developers or the engineers or the teams that are working on AI. It's actually the domain experts and the existing experts in the industry, various industries. They'll need to work hand in hand to make that vision come true, versus just expecting things to just work, right? It's not just going to be one-sided kind of experience. It has to be working together.
Yeah, I went to this great South by Southwest talk back in the day when it was actually held in person, and the one I went to was about like robots taking over the world. And the guy got up and he goes, "Look, the people have been panicking about this since forever, since the first technology was invented." He said when the combine was invented, the farmers were out in the streets like protesting because they're like, "You're going to take away my job." But he's like, "No, that innovation helped them learn new skills and go on to do better things too." So I still think it's an evolution of that. Yeah. And then I love your point on, which is what we very much believe at Khoros too. It's a combination of people and technology for sure to make things better. That's great. So along your prestigious career, I love the thoughts that you have and what you're bringing to the table when it comes to your current role and then in past roles too. But having those belief systems and putting those in place, those are things that we pick up along the way. But one of the reasons we pick them up is because we have failures along the way too. So can you share, this is CX Confessions, so we're asking you to confess a little bit about one of those maybe hard lessons that you learned along the way that you've been able to apply new ideas and things to make them better the next time.
Yeah, definitely. This was, not just the hardest lesson, but one of the hardest questions. And but when it, so as I was thinking about this question, I was thinking like, coming to this B2B world and looking at like maybe like the 70% of revenue is coming from 3 to 4 big customers. When it comes to moving the needle on CX, I feel it takes a lot of time and energy and passion and persistence, the right business case and prioritization. You pilot, you iterate. I think that's something that I feel is going to be critical, not only at Crown Castle, but in a lot of the B2B companies, is that kind of the passion and persistence to try and keep iterating, because there is no perfect solution and answers today. There is no silver bullet, or, when it comes to getting, the customer experience right, when it is like with respect to like just the top 2 or 3 customers who are bringing in like, lion's share of the revenue. One of the things that we are continuing to work on and learn is like, how does NPS, which is a key industry metric, how is it applicable and actionable in such a scenario where you're like talking about just 2 or 3 customers bringing in this 80% of the revenue. So we are kind of on that journey to kind of break down the CS metrics, whether the KPIs for customers, and thinking through creatively and innovatively on how to do that. And one of the hardest lessons here is you realize it's not just a one-sided thing. You actually have to work with your customers, and they have to come along with you when it's about these 2, big 3 or 4 customers. So you can't just impact change because you are working so closely. And so that's the hard part, is like, how do you not have the customer experience mindset that you want in your own company, but how do you do that with your customers, and they co-create with you and plan with you and partner with you to deliver, get that enhanced customer experience. So that's kind of the hardest part, is not just things that are under your control, but working with your customers to get them to help us to help them.
Great answer.
All right, Sangeeta. Well, thank you so much for telling us sharing that story, and for telling us a little bit more about your perspective. As we've talked about, it is really the heart of great customer experience is about connection and personal connection. So Sangeeta is not just an incredibly accomplished senior leader of customer experience. She's also an incredible athlete and passionate about philanthropy. We just want to get to know you a little bit better. So we have our confession of 5 quick fire questions. You ready to jump in?
Totally. Bring it on.
All right. All right. So let us know a little bit more about you. What was your first concert?
First concert. Celine Dion. She was one of my favorites. And I know. It
Nice.
was really.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I am so jealous.
She was
That is
just
on my
one person on the
post-pandemic
stage.
list.
Like, it wasn't like 100 people, dancing and all of that. It was just one person. And she, just, delighted and thrilled the audience, as you can imagine, like never before. So,
Where did you see her?
in one of the concert centers in Brooklyn.
Oh, nice. Nice. I'm sure that was fantastic. How about your first job?
So I worked at Intel as a hardware design engineer, and working on one of the chips. So not the Pentium chips, the chips before that, like we call it the 386 and the 486. So I was one of the engineers working on that chipset.
Very nice.
That's incredible. If you couldn't do what you're doing today, what profession other than your own would you attempt?
Fashionista. I love fashion.
Ooh.
I love, dressing up and, taking part in fashion shows and pageants and all of that. So yeah, and Manhattan's perfect for that.
I was about to say, you're
Yeah.
living in the right place. Yes.
Girl after my own heart.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite app on your phone right now?
Right now it's Seamless. Seamless, it's a food ordering app, which is, I'm told, is very optimized for Manhattan for quickest service and delivery. So I love it. You can get the best food from the various restaurants here without, stepping out of your home. So it's been really great.
I'm jealous. Okay.
Yeah, it is the answer in New York, and now I'm getting hungry. It's in the morning out here.
Yeah.
Speaking of yummy things, what is your biggest indulgence? Our last question. Your biggest indulgence.
For me, I think my favorite food is Indian food, and so I've developed a taste for a lot of other cuisines, but whenever it comes to like Indian street food, that's kind of my favorite, still. So that's kind of my indulgence. Anytime I get like some street food kind of restaurant from India, then that's kind of where I would go to.
Wow.
What's your favorite dish?
It's called a dish called pani puri. So it's these small, really small, pockets of, wheat crisps, and you fill it with a bunch of liquids, and then you put it in your mouth, and it just, kind of blows up in your mouth with that liquid, and it's sensational.
Yes, please.
In your
Yes,
mind, in
please.
your mouth, and everything. So it's really amazing.
Yes, please.
Yep, I'm Googling it now. That
Yeah.
sounds divine.
Yeah.
Well, Sangeeta, that was so fun. Thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your journey as a CX leader. We are grateful for your story and your time. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening in.
Thank you, Catherine and Spike. It was really a great conversation. And, as you prepare for some of these, you actually learn through that, right? So the conversation itself, pre versus post this podcast has made me smarter. So thank you for that.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, our pleasure. We've learned a lot, and we hope you have too. Thanks for listening in, and we'll see you next time on CX Confessions.
Your customers expect to be understood. Their likes and dislikes, their history with your brand, and their communication preferences. But so many companies struggle to connect the dots of interaction across their own teams and channels, and it's creating customer experience challenges and disasters. That's where Khoros can help. Khoros is the award-winning customer engagement platform built to turn those siloed interactions with your customer into enterprise value. Khoros works with more than 2,000 of the world's leading brands and powers more than 500 million digital interactions every day. Khoros is the award-winning platform for digital-first customer engagement. Ready to create human connection across the digital customer experience to create customers for life? Learn more at Khoros.com. Thanks for listening to CX Confessions, brought to you by Khoros. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to hit subscribe in your favorite podcast player and give us a rating. See you next time.